So I got my next Crush Your Goals inspirational quote. So, the question of your worthiness is not on the table at all. You know what you want. Embrace that and stand up for it without huffing the spray paint that everyone else is huffing. By Heather, how do you say that last name? Havrileski. So that's our inspirational quote for the day. So I just spent a little time, cleaned up, vacuumed up some loose slack that was in there, grinding material, whatever. Got my front subframe connector right here. I think it gets welded in from underneath here, and somewhere along here. So I'm going to drop that in there and kind of mark off the spot. Since this isn't weld through primer, it's just regular primer, I wanted to get something on there. And then I figure I'll drop it in place, mark off where the welds are going to be, and then take the primer off just in that area so I can get it welded in here. I got the front subframe connector, kind of held it down in place. Still a little bit warm there, but it's starting to come together. I got some gaps in there that are gonna have to get welded up, but I think it should look okay. It's gonna be under carpet anyway, so who cares if I screw it up a little bit. But getting some practice on this side. Got some welds started in here. So there was 3 holes in this subframe rail here, and I got all the way to the back here, at least on the bottom side. Figure this will be the tougher side to do. Looks like I got a little pinhole there to weld up. And another one there. But it's together. Right, got a little welding done here. So I'll show you my nice amateur welds. Actually pretty happy with how it turned out. Keep in mind, welding's not something I do every day. But I think some of it turned out, I think it turned out pretty good. I think it's pretty substantial. Everything's welded in. Like you can tell, some of these beads look really nice. This is where I started out. It's a goobered up mess way up front. This side looks all right. Got some good welds. You can kind of tell where I stopped and sputtered, and there was a couple spots where I burned through a little bit. And I think all in all it looks pretty good. And the shop manager, what do you think, bud? Got kind of tight here underneath where the seat brace goes, but I think it turned out all right. All right, back in the garage again, working on the puzzle fox here. So yesterday I got the front subframe rail, connector rail, welded in, and I thought I'd just shoot some primer on this where it's going to be underneath the seat bracket. So I thought, well, while I'm doing that, I'll move ahead to the next step here, which is getting the rear subframe kind of up in place and tack welding it up in the front. Well, I go to pop it back up under there, and it wouldn't pop up into place. I thought, oh no, is that front one too far back? But to my surprise here, this gap in the floor narrowed up, as you can see here, pretty considerably. So I'm gonna have to sand out some material, probably, I bet, back to this hump here. So take a little bit off of each side. It almost looks worse on this side. So I got a little bit of work here to do before I can even pop this up in place. All right, I made sure I could get this rear subframe connector rail up in the car, and I marked off where I'm going to be doing welds. So I kind of ground some of the paint off anywhere there's going to be welds. So this will be at the front of the torque box. This will be, I think this is kind of where that drop off is in the floor pan from the rear seat. And then this is up under kind of where the rear seat is, and this is the front side of the torque box. So each of those spots has holes where it's going to get kind of plug welded through. I noticed I did kind of beat the floor up above where this gets welded to, so once I get this kind of up in place, I'll have to pound that floor back down a little bit. But I think I'm pretty good to go for kind of getting this up in place and getting the process started of getting this welded in. Thought I'd take a second to show this. I got the torque box for the Detroit Speed Engineering all welded in from the bottom side of the car. And here's another shot, and here it is kind of from the back side. Keep in mind I welded in another 1/4 inch plate here, so I ended up just piling up some welds on there just to kind of fill the gap. You can kind of see that plate right up in there. Pretty happy with how it's turned out so far. So it's all welded in from the bottom side, and then I'll be moving on to the next steps. Working on getting the seat brace welded back in. It's funny how flimsy that is and how much it seems to have gotten tweaked just kind of handling it. We're gonna work on getting that tacked and welded in. Looks like I got some pretty good gaps to fill. All right, getting more work done here. Got the seat cross member, or the top of that, all welded in. And got this burned in a little bit here. Got the 2 halves of the subframe connector welded together. Got it welded in around where it comes through the floor pan in the back here. Got it welded up here on top of where the seat mount goes from the subframe connector. And as you can see under here, I can see the bottom side of the weld there. I might be able to just fill this gap in. I was filling in some pretty good gaps there before. So I got the mount for the seat here bolted up in place per the instructions, and got that all burned in. I'm pretty happy with those welds there. I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. A little bit of some goobered up stuff, but not bad. Then you can see here, this is the bottom of the 2 halves right here, all welded in. So pretty much all I have left to do is run a bead down each side of this rear subframe connector from the back up to where the 2 halves join together on both sides. And then this side will be done. So feeling pretty good about where I'm at. Okay, so I just thought I'd show this. I'm getting close to pretty much done welding in this subframe connector on this side here. So this is all the rear. Ran a weld all the way along the bottom, both sides. My nice amateur welds. Pretty happy with how it looks. So is the shop dog. Hey, watch out, pup. Pretty happy with how it looks. Gonna look around and see if there's any little pits or anything that I need to touch up. So I welded it all in here. This floor pan didn't seem even from side to side, but I don't know how picky I need to get about that. I did kind of try to pound this up a little bit just because it seemed like it was really low on this side of the subframe connector. But I think I have it pretty much all welded in. I was debating coming up here to the top side and running a tack all along here. There's some spots that kind of burn through, but I thought about just running a bead along here on the top side just because I'm anal. There's some spots here that need to be touched up. I'll probably look underneath before I crawl out from completely under the car and make sure there's nothing else that needs to be touched up under there. So I'm calling this pretty much done. I might do one more little update. I think I probably will just go through and run a nice light bead of welds all along both sides here, just because that's how I am. Don't know when to stop sometimes. One more quick little update before I call it a night. So I did go through and just lay down a bead on each side of the subframe connector. So I want to say this side is completely done. So I'll let that cool off for the night and get myself situated to start cutting into the driver's side. All right, so I'm getting ready to switch sides here. Broke out my nice new DeWalt Costco vacuum. I'm kind of a neat freak about stuff, so I got a bunch of sound deadener all busted up and got that all sucked up, and I had all sorts of slag and grinding and welding dust and slag all over. So got that all cleaned up and ready to switch to the driver's side. All right, I got my practice on the passenger side, so I'm moving over here to the driver's side now. Got my light set up. First things first, knocking off that sound deadener off the floor and kind of clearing out some things in the back here. But gonna get moving on this. Thought I should do a quick little video as I was getting started this morning. I have a 2-inch wide slot cut through the floor pan, front to back. So you can see it under here. Right from the front subframe all the way back to the torque box. This one actually, just like the other side, had a little hunk of material that kind of came down, so I left the back so it kind of catches that subframe connector. And I'm just kind of working on it now. You can kind of see a mark. I've just been kind of popping the subframe connector up into place, and I kind of marked an edge off here so I can start to grind it smooth. But I got a mark kind of marked on the side here of where I need to. So I'm just under here with the grinder with the flap disc on it, and I'm just gonna grind some of this edge off here and then do another test fit. All right, I thought I'd show this before I start welding the subframe connectors in. Got everything cleaned out, got all the edges sanded down through the paint. I ended up just using a wire wheel on a drill. Then down under here, got it all ready to go. This up here is just some weld through primer. So hopefully that'll just keep things from getting rust on it again in the future. I think it's pretty good. There was some rust on the side of that frame rail, but it's mostly surface rust. If I really want to get picky, I'd clean it all up, but I'm pretty happy with it the way it is. Oh man, I'm just overly excited to get this other subframe connector in too. Looks like I kind of mangled this up a little bit, but I'll straighten that out a little bit before I slop the subframe connector up in there. Again, went along all the edges and tried to get as much paint and stuff off as possible so I can get a nice weld. Then again, with the subframe connector pieces, I just slopped some weld through primer on the bottom of that. That's going to go down in the channel, so that's the front one. Here's the rear one. That's going to be up around the torque box there, so I slapped some weld through primer on all of that. Thinking that should keep that pretty good for once it's in there, and hopefully stand the test of time pretty good. Getting ready to burn these in now. Got everything, holes drilled out, edges sanded down, I think pretty good. Got paint off a lot of things. I got this subframe connector in here sitting just ready to go. I had my son come out here and check it out just to kind of show how everything fit, and I did move my welding ground and put the rear section up in there, and it fit up in there just like it belonged in there. So you can see it just sitting under there. But getting ready to start welding this stuff in. Feeling pretty good about it, and I'm gonna get cranking. All right, so working on the driver's side. And I got it all up in place. I did have to do a little trimming, I think, after I welded I didn't get it pounded exactly in the same spot for the the subframe connector on the front, so I had to trim like probably not even a 1/16 of an inch or so off of the front of this rear subframe connector to get it to pop up in place. And I got it all plug welded and then welded back here so that it's all up in place. And I got it so this bolt for the trailing link slides in and out nice and easy. And I had welded on an extra plate between this and here, so it's on the side of the subframe connector. So I just laid a couple of quick little beads of weld there, kind of like I did on the passenger side. So it's working out about the same, going together pretty smoothly, pretty nice right now. So some of my goobered up welds here, but pretty happy with how it's looking. So I thought I'd show one last update on this. Again, my intention wasn't to show step by step what I did with the subframe connectors in the car. Since Detroit Speed and Engineering has their own really good video on it, they did have really good paper directions too, where they didn't cover 100% of the stuff, like completely welding in, and I'll show that in a minute here. Completely welding in and boxing in around the part that goes back around the torque box. But I'll show that in a second. Otherwise, the video is great. Their paper instructions are great. Once you get figured out what exactly you're looking at in the picture, I had a little bit of difficulty, but maybe I'm just a little bit slow. But just thought I'd show you kind of what the final product is here. Well, minus I haven't put primer or anything on the subframe connectors yet, but I just kind of wanted to get this point done. Well, the next step is I want to get the roll cage in the car, so I'm not going to put primer or paint or anything on this yet. I want to get pretty much all the stuff, welding, grinding, whatever I'm going to be doing inside the car done first before I put any sort of primer or paint down. And I'm actually thinking about doing like the 415 completely on the floor, but I'll figure that out. So again, not a professional welder by any means, but I'm pretty happy with the welder itself and my product here. I got some nice beads and stuff here for the welds, but you can tell I really slopped it up on the front there. I really kind of goobered it in at the front, but I got some, it should be solid, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I'm happy with it in that regard. Again, you can see some really splattery spots there, but it was kind of tough to get under here, like to get yourself under here, and I had those old curtains that were kind of draped underneath the steering wheel and the dash, so it was kind of hard to get in here and really see what you're doing, get your arm up in here, get your head kind of down here underneath the steering wheel with a big welding helmet on. So it was a little bit tricky getting to that front section, at least it was for me. I got everything all welded in, and I felt a lot better on this side because I had all the trimming done in the floor pan for this rear subframe connector, and instead of just welding front to back on the front, I kind of did like an inch or two long of a weld and kind of moved around more, so maybe that helped with not having any sort of gap close up back here. I did trim a little bit more material, it seemed like, out of this side, but by the time I got some welding started, it must have closed up the gap just a little bit, so it wasn't such a pain in the butt to try to weld. This time I tried to do a little better. I cleaned up some of the seam sealer a little bit better, got that away from here so I didn't have so much kind of burning going on. You can see I got some a little bit crispy there. One thing I did find is, well, when I was welding in that torque box from underneath, I didn't have enough of this sound deadener peeled away, and I noticed it was smoking a little bit inside the car. But luckily I kind of caught that right away. I kept checking inside the car as I was welding from underneath, just because I knew it was close to some other stuff from underneath. So I did a pretty good job there, I think. As you can see here, pretty happy with my welding. Kind of got my rhythm, it seems like, back in this section here. Some of these welds I think look pretty nice, again, for someone who's not a professional welder. And but this side, again, I think I showed this before. This side was looking really good too. Had some nice welds going along here. Even in the front, it wasn't too bad. I did go through after the fact, like I said, the paper instructions said to completely weld around that torque box. And some wire sticking through there. It looks, I burned through in a couple spots here, so I might touch that up with a welder from the top side here, because I think there's still a couple little pinholes there. Oh, I just wanted to show this too. It's been a couple of months since I started on this pasture side, and I kind of just worked on it every now and then, every couple of weeks it seemed like. So I've had those sheets hanging in here forever, so it's nice to get these sheets out of the car. But I was worried about this, like with the car sitting up on those stands, those dollies, and welding in there so much. I was scared about the doors or twisting the car out of shape, but this I was happy to see after I got it all together. Closes nice and solid yet, so this side was always been really good. The pins aren't too loose on the door, but that door is always closed really nice. This side, the driver's side, has some worn bushings on the door pin, so but still closes pretty nice. Pretty happy with it, with my end result here. So I'll climb under the car here and show you how things look from under there. As you can see there, got some nice welds. You can kind of penetrating through there. You can kind of see them. I'm pretty happy with how this has turned out. Got a nice weld in the front of there. So these welds along under here look pretty good. I got a couple where I kind of goobered them up. Then some where you can tell where I really got in a good rhythm. Front to back. Some of this is discolored from welding from the top side. So looking pretty good from this other side of the driver's side subframe connector. Oh, looks really good to me. Pretty happy, especially with these welds. For this subframe connector out to the seat mounts, I think it did pretty good. It's a little nicer when you're not worried about burning through so much with a little thicker metal. This is what I really wanted to show. I really goobered up some of this stuff, but in the paper directions it said to completely weld around the torque box, so it's completely welded around the bottom. And then this other sheet metal that's from the factory welded all the way around here, all the way up and around, and then up in the corners of the mount for the lower links. But all in all, pretty happy with it. That actually took quite a bit of time, so I went around, did it on the passenger side too. I didn't have it all completely welded in before, but this side turned out a little bit nicer than what the other side did. You can tell I actually ran out of gas right about here. So there's some goobered up welds right there, but all in all, I think it turned out pretty well. So I'm not going to do anything with the upper mounts since it's going to be the Cobra IRS under there. Won't be using the upper mounts. So that's going to be kind of the next things is getting that roll cage in, getting the subframe in, and putting in the mounts up on the frame that the rear mounts go to, kind of up where that dolly is right now. So kind of where the quad shocks were. Then I'm debating doing a little more welding on these Scott Rod panels up in the front end here. So I'm thinking I'm going to do the MAF Racing tubular under here, just because this has a bit of a tweak in here. So I think I'll go to that tubular, and then I'm debating doing the tubular up under the bumper. We got the roll cage sitting here, just wait to go in. These lower arms that go around the seats, and then the rest of the tubing up there on the top shelf. So there's my nice list. This install SFCs has been on this list probably for close to a year. So this is pretty exciting for me. Done.